I'm going to call the meeting to order, and please rise and stand look to the right for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America
and to
and to the republic for which it stands,
one
one nation, under God,
with
liberty and justice for all.
So John, go ahead and mute your screen now.
Okay, got it.
We're at approval of the agenda. I'd entertain a motion to approve or amend the meeting agenda. John, unmute. Good.
I would like to I move to approve the meeting agenda as given.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? All right. We'll do the roll call vote. Craig?
Aye.
Art?
Aye.
Leanna?
Aye.
And John?
Aye.
And I vote aye, and the motion passes. There are no public comments on agenda items. Do we have a student board member comment? Are you back there, Aaliyah?
Yeah, I'm back. So
Okay.
with everything that's happening in the school, the only comment that I have so far, because school is out, is that practices have been suspended, which of course is for our own safety. So I just hope that everyone stays safe and healthy over this, the pandemic.
Okay, thank you. Well said. And now we're at board member comments. Craig?
I don't have anything.
Okay, Art?
Hopefully you can hear me. I'm having trouble with the mute and unmute buttons. They're just not working for me right. Anyway, I do have a couple things. I went to a Kiwanis regular club meeting this month, and which is something I normally always do since I'm a Kiwanis club member. However, at this meeting, there weren't very many people at it. It was a Zoom meeting, of course, and my Zoom capability is atrocious, but so I have made arrangement that I went down to the Salmon Center so that I could actually do it there, and did it there. In any case, there were numerous, not questions, but people were asking me, what's going to happen with opening up in the fall? And so I just wanted to report that. That is obviously on people's minds, Kiwanis members, and I'm sure everyone else. That's the main comment or question thing I keep getting from people is, what's going to happen in the fall? Second is, I just wanted to, I can't remember the date of when it happened, but we did get an alert that Liz Drew had died. And I don't know if that was before the last board meeting, but I wanted to just remember her in that. For me personally, she was one of my advisors when I was doing my internship here at North Mason School District as a school counselor.
Oh.
And that was before she became a principal and before she became, at Sandhill, or I'm sorry, at Balfour Elementary and stuff, when she was at the time the head of the special education department. In any case, so I just wanted to throw that in there as my own personal testimony to Liz Drew. She was a wonderful person. Outside of that, that's enough for now.
Okay, thanks, Art. And we will hear from the superintendent about the opening of schools, so listen carefully. Leanna?
I don't have much. I'm at home.
Okay. Okay, thank you. John?
I just want to ditto what Art said. People are wondering what's going on with the opening of the schools, which we'll find out. And I just want to add my little tribute to Liz Drew. I did not know her well. I ran into her she was a member of the, what is it? The regional.
The ESD?
Yeah, the ESD. And I would run into her in that capacity, particularly when I was on the policy committee. But right after I was elected, she sent me this nice little note, and I just really appreciated it. It was full of hope for new beginnings, and I still have it somewhere. and I appreciated her taking the time and the encouragement that she's given me over the years. She was certainly a person that put her heart and soul into public education.
She was. Thank you, John. She was a dear friend of mine too, and we stayed in touch routinely all those years after we both retired. So I will miss her very much. So we'll move on to the consent agenda items. I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda, or if you want to remove an item.
Madam Chair, oh,
Go ahead, John.
I just moved that we accept the consent agenda as given.
Okay. Any discussion?
I did have a comment in regards to the, let me go up here real quick to find it. It was part of the surplus. The transportation parts disposal. Have we cleaned up maybe the process of acquiring parts? Because that seems like an awful lot of parts that were just sitting around for a while.
Well, I can let Ashley talk a little bit more, but that was cleaning up the process because they had been around for so long. So I'll let her explain that.
Okay, so I figured somebody was going to notice our quite extensive surplus list. So Maureen, obviously, this is her second year within the transportation department. One of the things that she tasked Jerry with, who is one of he's our lead mechanic. He's getting ready to retire. He's been with that shop for decades. And so prior transportation directors had a certain level of inventory they wanted kept on the shelves for if buses went down. It's completely different practice than what we use nowadays. But unfortunately, there was a mindset to keep the parts because you never know when you might need a part from a 1960s bus. And so it stayed on the shelf for decades. And a lot of them were new in the box. I can assure you that's not how we operate currently. Maureen does a very good job staying within her state given budget. But I wanted them off the books because technically we're a modified accrual school district. And so inventory is kept as an asset in our financial statements. And I wanted it cleaned up to be truer to what our actual numbers were. So if we can't actually use the part, I don't want it on the shelf. And so they cleaned it up and took them all out. And that's what you're seeing now.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I don't mean to get an operational bill, but just as a point of financial conservatism, if you will.
Exactly.
When we need a part, I mean, obviously you need parts when you need them, but ordering one part and saying, well, why not order 3 just in case? That just, I don't know if that's necessarily the right way of doing it.
Well,
and I understand it's not probably the way of doing it now, but obviously at one point.
Well, a big part of this is some of those parts we're talking are like literally 20 to 30 years old. And back then there wasn't the convenience of the internet. You can't go on and just purchase something and get it the next day like we can now. And so they would turn around and purchase more just for the sake of having it there. That's no longer necessary in the 21st century that we live in. Yes, we are much more conservative when it comes to those expenses, and the shop is nice and clean. Some of those items we might actually be able to get some money from when it comes to surplus, because there are older buses that people acquire and then remodel or do something with them. And so those parts do have a value. So they're not going to be tossed per se. Of course, some of them, some of the larger ones, that were originally $300-400 a piece, we likely won't be able to recoup that. So.
Okay. That answer your question, Craig?
Yeah, thanks, Ashley.
No problem.
I'm going to ask the superintendent to speak to the NMEA bargaining agreement as well as the 2 calendar amendments.
Okay, sure. First, I do want to point out when I'm done, John has a question too. I saw his hand raised. Okay, the bargaining agreement, we completed a 1-year agreement with the teachers union. Given the COVID environment and the way everything is up in arms and also, or up in the air, And also our levy situation, it's reasonable to have just a 1-year agreement, hoping that things will be better and we can come back and talk again. One thing I do want to commend and thank deeply our teachers union for is they came to the table with the best interests of the district in mind. And we actually proposed an agreement, a part of the agreement that has a decrease to the salary in each cell of the teachers bargaining agreement, that because they understand the situation that we're in financially and the uncertainty that we're in and the possible additional financial impacts at the state level because of the impact on the economy of the COVID crisis. So I really want to publicly say thank you to the teachers for taking a stance in bargaining that they wanted to do what was best for the district. And that was really important.
Yep. And you can add our thanks to that if you would. Just let them know that we appreciate their sensitivity to the situation right now. And I know that that is a huge thing to do, to give up part of your salary just for the greater good. So on behalf of the board, that was excellent. Thank you.
Yes, we're very excited about that and very thankful. The other thing you asked me to talk about was the calendars. As part of bargaining, the teachers brought forth a request that we look at the school calendar for this coming year as well as the following year. Usually, you know, we're 2 years out, so we would be looking just at the following year with a proposal to add a midwinter break that is similar to what they do in Peninsula school districts. So the week of President's Day, that we always have a 4-day weekend because we give an extra day that is technically a snow day, just in case, to make that a week-long vacation and extend the school year a little bit. That especially in this COVID environment, and we'll be in probably different circumstances for education throughout the year, that will be a really much needed break for staff and students to a more stressful way of learning this year, particularly. So we agreed that to add that to the calendar. So that is what is different and why we changed the coming year calendar and the calendar for the following year as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions or discussion about the consent agenda? Art.
Yes, regarding the calendar, I looked at the current one for 2021. I didn't really check the following year one for it, but I couldn't find anything about snow days. So how is that handled?
Yeah, we're not building snow days in. As we began to learn with the spring and online distance learning, we're going to build our expectations that we're prepared to do in the event of snow days. If they're days that we're in school, that we're prepared to transition with a call. Instead of saying you're staying home, we're going to say you'll be learning by distance tomorrow.
Okay. Okay, John, did you have something?
Its time has sort of passed, but I just wanted to correct the record. I don't think when it comes to parts, I don't think that Craig is a conservative. I think he is just an over-the-top liberal.
Okay, thanks for that. All right, then all in favor, and it'll be a roll call vote again of approving the consent agenda. Craig? Craig's gone. Art?
Aye.
Craig's at the bottom now.
Oh,
I'm here.
all
Sorry,
right.
something happened to me. Something
all right.
happened to me.
And your vote is?
Aye.
Okay. Leanna?
Aye.
Okay. John?
Aye.
All right, and I vote aye and the motion passes. So now we are at general fund budget extension.
Ashley Murphy, you're up. I do want to point out, in case you didn't hear us at the beginning, Ashley Supre was married this weekend and she is now Ashley Murphy.
Okay, so I think we need to enter public hearing before I start talking on this one.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Not
I
a
was
problem.
not thinking correct. All right, so I will officially open the public hearing to hear from members of the public who wish to speak for or against the North Mason School District 1920 General Fund Budget Extension, and at the conclusion of testimony, close the hearing. So Ashley, would you like to speak to the budget extension?
Yep. Jackie, can you open the resolution for me? Okay, so this is going to be short and sweet. Normally, when we're doing a budget extension, I come to you guys with some type of presentation to explain why we're needing to do a budget extension. There's two specific reasons why we're ending up having to do a budget extension this specific year, even though we tried to build the budget so we wouldn't have to do this. First reason, with the pandemic, we were allotted CARES Act funding of just under $500,000 to be able to use those funds to help offset the additional costs that we saw related from anything from PPE to additional custodial costs to additional curriculum requirements, technology, to get us up and running for a more digital platform for the school year. So that $500,000 that we're receiving, we have to have room in the budget to spend it, or we can't spend it. So if we want to be ready, we need to be able to spend that money. In addition to that, I'm sure you guys will remember back at the very beginning of the school year in September, we had that lightning strike at Belfair Elementary. So that lightning strike ended up costing $500,000 in damage to Belfair Elementary. Thankfully, we have insurance, and the insurance company paid for all of the replacement parts for our fire suppression system and the labor outside of $1,000 deductible. But in order to pay the bills, I need the capacity in the budget to pay them. We've already received payment from our insurance company in full for the cost of all the work. I just need to be able to pay it at this point. Hence the reason we're looking at a $900,000 increase total. We can only spend 20 or 80% of our CARES Act fund. So we can't spend the full $491,000 right now. So we're looking at $900,000 total so that we can pay for the damages to Belfair Elementary and get ready for next school year. That will bring our general fund budget for the 1920 school year to just under $35.5 million. Do you guys have any questions regarding those things?
I don't. Anybody else?
Okay.
All right, then I will close the hearing and now ask for a motion to approve and adopt resolution 12G20 General Fund Budget Extension as presented.
So moved.
Thanks, Craig. Okay, and the roll call vote is Art.
Aye.
Thank you. Leanna?
Aye.
Okay, John
Aye.
and Craig.
Aye.
And I say aye, and the resolution is approved. And now we will move to the Transportation Vehicle Fund Budget Extension. And once again, I will adjourn into a public hearing to speak for or against the 1920 Transportation Fund Budget Extension. Ashley?
Okay, same thing, Jackie, if you want to open that extension. In September, once again, we had one of our buses totaled during a not at fault vehicle accident or bus accident. When that bus was totaled, our insurance company, who's probably not the biggest fan of us at this point, they are paying for the cost of a full replacement of a large bus. That cost is just about $140,000, $135,000 of it being basically covered by the insurance company. So I need to increase our transportation vehicle fund by the $135,000. We've been assured that the bus is going to be delivered by August 31st. So we're keeping our fingers crossed, seeing as how I'm doing the extension for this budget year. So the bus should be delivered by the end of August, but I need the capacity in the budget to actually be able to pay for the bus, hence the budget extension. Any questions about this one?
Okay, thank you, Ashley.
Mhm.
Then I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion to approve Resolution 13G20 Transportation Vehicle Budget Extension.
So moved.
Okay. Are there any questions or discussion? And we'll do a roll call vote again. Art,
Aye.
Leanna,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
and Craig.
Aye.
And I vote aye, and the resolution is approved. So now we are at the preliminary budget presentation for 2021.
Okay, so we have to present a preliminary budget or have a preliminary budget available to the public by July 10th of each year, but our actual budget is not due until August 31st. We normally adopt during our third Thursday meeting in August. So again, this is very preliminary, and it's being done in the method that it's being done for a specific reason. I'll be able to explain that. So the first page that you're seeing, this is normally where we pull all of our high level budget information from. So you're going to see where it says general fund and it shows ending total fund balance at 6.5 million. It's not going to be 6.5 million, but what I needed to be able to do was be able to pinpoint specifically what our salaries and benefits were going to be. So we knew how many dollars we had left to spread across the board. And then we go through a process of balancing every program the district has against the revenue source with all the expenditures. So that's the process we're dealing with right now. But our revenues are accurate. So our revenues are our final revenues. So next year, we're looking at our total revenues in the general fund to be just under about 35 million going into next year. Associated ASB, they're looking at about 412,000. Debt service fund is going to be at about 2.7 million. Our capital projects fund, we're going to have a whopping $13,600 going into that fund. And again, that capital projects fund, the goal with that fund is to spend down the money in that fund. If you don't have any current bonds and you don't have any other money flowing into the capital projects fund because you don't have like a capital projects levy or anything like that, you do expect that fund to be zero once your projects have been completed. And it looks like we're going to be very close to zero within about 600 to 800,000 by the end of this year. And next year, that by the end of the 2021 school year, that fund will have $0 in it. And then the transportation vehicle fund, Marine is currently working on sort of bulking up that fund so we can do a purchase of 3 to 4 buses at a time versus doing a bus at a time. It's better for depreciation purposes. So we're looking at about $265,000 in revenues going into that fund over the course of the next year. Now, all of the other funds, but the general fund, their expenditures, where it says total appropriation and then expenditures, those are all accurate. So those are all based upon what our anticipated expenditures should be. So for like the debt service fund, that would be what all of our debt service payments should be for the year, to include transfer over to pay for non-voted debt. Now in that section B where it says excess levies for the 2021 collection, we don't have a 2021 collection. So normally under that general fund column where you see 3 zeros, we would normally have a number in that bottom 0 under the general fund. We have nothing. So when I certify levies come November, I'll be certifying $0 under general fund, but under the debt service fund, I'm going to be certifying 2.2 million. So there's still that debt service levy that's sitting out there from the bond from the buildings. Okay, so that one will still be we'll still be collecting money on and having that money funnel into the debt service fund to be able to pay for that outstanding debt. Jackie, can you scroll down to the next page? Do you guys have any questions regarding that first page?
No.
Okay, and we'll go into more detail next month as far as like, you know, the percentage of our budget that's based upon salaries and benefits and the percentage of the budget that's operational MSOCs, that type of thing. So we'll get into that next month. One of the reasons why I specifically included this page, because this is going to show where we lost the staff. Okay, so in the, I guess you could say column 5 where it says budget 2021, that shows that we should be going into next year with certificated employees at 152. This year, when we were doing our budget, we were at 171.5. So you're going to see a reduction there. And then for classified employees, we're at 125.84 of FTE. So not people, but full-time equivalent. And we're going to be down to 98.62. The salary and benefit side of the budget, we made sure to do it specifically based upon if we were coming back face-to-face normal school year, these are the staff members we would have, and that's how the budget was built. Obviously being as optimistic as possible going into next year. So that's where we're seeing the decreases on that side. Now you'll see on the classified side, our FTE count in the 2018-19 school year when it came time for budgeting was just under 115. So we are under where we were a few years ago on both sides, both the certificated and the classified side. But this page specifically goes in and it splits out where we're expecting to see most of the expenses coming into the next school year. Jackie, can you scroll down to the next page? I just want to see if there's anything that I need to highlight specifically about that. Yeah. So this is getting into specifically what our salaries and benefits should be. So in 2019-20, we had originally for just employee benefits and payroll, we were at 9 million. And that is with half of 1 year of sub costs because last year sub didn't start till January. So next year we have a full year of sub costs and we're still under the benefit side by just over $1 million due to the cuts that we took going into that year. So do you, and I know that you guys had a chance to preview some of the other information included. I think I gave you guys like 7-ish pages of the budget. Do you guys have any questions regarding any of the information you saw, Craig?
I do actually.
Okay.
There's actually I have 2 questions.
Okay.
One for you and one might be better for Dana, but
Okay.
the question I have is back to that. It was the general fund financial summary that we just went over with, you were talking about column 5 where we see the FTEs.
Yep.
Going to the financial summary, it shows that our ending fund balance for 2021 jumps up to $6.5 million from
Correct.
the previous 2 years, which were 2.8 and 2.1 respectively.
Yeah.
Why is that so much higher?
It won't be 6.5 million. So this right here is just the preliminary budget where we focused purely on salaries, benefits, staff, and that piece. So what you're going to, when you see the final budget, what you're going to see in that ending fund balance area, due to our 8 to 10% fund balance requirement, you're going to see somewhere between 2.8 to $3 million there. The rest of that funding right there, that 3.5 million, is being allocated to things like electricity, water, sewer, gas, all of that. It's just not in those pots yet. So that's the second part of the budget that we do. We balance by program. So right now, what you're seeing is focused specifically on people. And then the second part is MSOCs. So it will decrease.
Okay. And then the other question I have with regarding, it goes down to the fiscal year enrollment and staff counts. The total K-12 is planning on being higher than last year by 60, 70 FTE students, yet our full-time staff FTEs have gone down dramatically. What's our financial implication with regards to class sizes with that? I know in the contract with the NMEA, anytime they're over there, a lot of students, there's pay on top of that. But what does that do with regards to us being in compliance with state
Well, this past year
mandates?
this past year we had numerous employees that were certificated employees that counted in our number, but didn't actually, did things like instructional coaching, et cetera. So they didn't count in our class size numbers. They weren't assigned to classrooms with students. So by reducing strategically the way that we did and placing those folks back in classroom assignments, we haven't impacted our classroom sizes at all anticipated for next year.
And
We're still within the state requirements.
Yep. We have met our class size requirements because one of the specific areas that we have to focus on is K-3, because they will take money back from us. And we reran all of our numbers based upon the certificated staff that we would have left to ensure that we will be able to maintain our class size compliance. Next year, our number, this year it was 15.4 was our class size average in K to third grade. Next year, we will be going up to 16.4. Now, what I will say is that's not students and seats, because it is averaged because we have specialists at the elementary level, and that does count towards that averaging.
With how's it looking preliminarily, at least with support with our paras and stuff in classrooms? What's sort of
that will depend
Or
on
see.
the number. Yeah, we cut those numbers of positions considerably, but as we go forward, that's also going to depend on the model that we're able to open school in. Because, if we are able to do the hybrid model we're proposing this evening, we will have more than we would if, say, we have to start school with all online. Then we wouldn't need all of those positions. We might need some different positions, but it would impact our staff overall. We're going to have another Zoom meeting with our classified employees to talk about those potential impacts next week.
And one last question, I promise, and I'll just be quiet. With regards to state funding, have we had any communication from the higher ups at the state with regards to the economy, with regards to the economic fallout with COVID, to what that translates to apportionment?
We continue to be assured that apportionment will be protected. When they did an analysis of what in school budgets currently fits the current definition of basic education, it's about 98% of what is in every school budget. In our district, the items that fell outside of that list came up to a total of about $65,000 of our budget. Correct, Ashley? So that
Correct.
if they only stick to making the cuts outside of basic ed, that would be the extent of our potential loss. And if the legislature does not do a special session and waits to return in the winter, they won't be considering any of those cuts until that point in time. So we are trying to budget and plan conservatively in case other things happen that affect the budget. It's very important as we develop the full plan for reopening school that we have very complete detailed descriptions that we will follow for doing things like taking attendance and ensuring that kids have their 6 hours of learning time a day that are what we're getting the apportionment money for. Because if we can't prove that, that could impact us when it comes to January, February, or April, and the legislature is making decisions. Did that answer your question? Sort of.
And then, Craig, I want to add one thing to that. One of the things that we're being told at the business level is to potentially prepare for reductions of about 15%. Now, and that they're telling us statewide to prepare for that as far as reduction of revenues. Now, we already took a reduction of about 16% due to the loss of the levy, and we couldn't stomach a reduction of another 15%. It would be almost humanly impossible. But we are sort of different in the fact that the state hasn't been super kind to our district as far as the money goes. So unlike a lot of our other surrounding districts that get like local effort assistance, we were getting $0. So that's on the table to be taken from all the other districts. We never got it to begin with. So we don't have to worry about it getting taken. So they've been getting that extra money. And so yes, they risk losing it now, but we never got it. So we don't even have to plan to lose it because we never got to spend it.
And I appreciate that. And you guys did a fantastic job considering the circumstances we're under. But I'm just worried about going back to 2009 when they did the mid-year pullbacks on budget. And like you said, we don't $65,000 of which is not basic education. any funding beyond that, beyond even that would hurt, but I can't even imagine the negative effects of that.
Yeah.
No, but if they make decisions that still conform to that definition of basic education, we'll basically be, well, we'll be pretty harmless. The impact will be relatively harmless to us compared to our neighbors. I mean, we have neighbors that 65,000 for us, because when you add in LEA and everything is more than $2 or $3 or $4 million. So it is.
And
different.
was that back when that occurred that last time? Was that mostly LEA funding? I understand that the funding is different because of post McCleary and all that stuff. Are we looking at? Am I making an apples and oranges comparison?
You are, but we don't know what it will be this time. But it is apples and oranges, because last time there were no fences around any of the money, and now we have that basic education definition that provides some fences.
Are you good?
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
We're getting from WASDA, WASA, OSPI right now.
And one of the things that I can say that we've done during this budget process, like we started at the cabinet level, pretty much prepping our budget in December. We've been extremely, extremely proactive in ensuring that when it came time to making the decision for the RIFs, how many employees we would have to cut, all of that, we made sure to do it in a way that our ultimate goal was obviously trying to keep the cuts as far away from the kids as possible, but still get us to a point where we're a solvent district that can pay our bills. And we did that successfully, because when I turned around and I started importing stuff to be able to draft the budget, things were balancing, which means we cut enough in order to pay our bills and keep the staff that we do have employed for next year paid. So that ended up actually working out well for us.
Okay, we appreciate all the work that you've done on this, Ashley, and thank you for keeping our heads above water as much as we can. You're just invaluable. So thank you.
Thanks.
So let's move to board development and linkage and the superintendent update.
Okay, and I'm looking to see what I have first on that.
We have budget stuff for current.
Oh, that's you. Keep talking.
Yep. Okay, so we'll start with here we go. Go ahead, Jackie. Okay, so we're going to start with our other funds. So this is for the month ending in June. Capital projects, we are currently down to about $1.222 million. And as I'm drafting the 2021 budget, I have it set so that our beginning fund balance should be about $800,000. So we have about just over $400,000 worth of expenditures and invoices that I expect to be paid over the next 6 weeks before the end of this fiscal year. Debt service, we're not going to see any other expenses leaving debt service. We just made our final debt service payment for this fiscal year on June 1st, which is why you're seeing that large drop right there from 2.2 down to 1.1 million. ASB, we're not seeing a whole lot of activity in right now, where it's currently sitting at about 416, and we expect for it to be just about that at the end of this fiscal year. And then transportation vehicle fund, we're currently sitting at 176,000. In August, we receive our $123,000 depreciation payment, but we will also have an invoice for about $141,000 for that bus that we're anticipating delivery by the end of August. And so we'll see that fund dip a bit as well. Now, the second page of this document dealing with enrollment, it doesn't show any changes. It's been the exact same since we closed in February, and OSPI gave us the numbers of what they're going to be paying us for based upon enrollment. So there's no changes there. So if you want to go, do you guys have any question regarding any of the other funds?
No, I don't.
Okay, we'll go to the dashboard to go over the general fund. I'm really excited about where our general fund is heading. We've done a lot of work, and there has been equal pain shared across the district when we started cutting. costs even in the current year to help with where we're going to be in next year. And you're going to be able to see that as we go through all of this. Our revenues, we'll start with that first. So we're currently at about 81.55% of our revenues that have been received to date. It's just about 0.4% under where we would anticipate to be at this point, which is completely reasonable, especially with property tax collections and such. Our projected year-to-date local sources, so this is where we see fines, fees, and property taxes. We're currently at 100.14% collected. Year-to-date, normally we would see us at about 98.06%. One of the things that I would like to speak to as far as property taxes in the community as a whole, Mason County turned around and granted they didn't do a blanket property tax extension, but they did do an extension for those that needed it. What we found is that people paid their property taxes when due. And that was, I held my breath for a little bit in anticipation of hoping that would be the case in order to get the bills paid. And thankfully, the community, really did do that. And so we saw the property taxes that we were expecting to be collected, they were collected, which definitely helped our situation. We have one property tax collection left in October. And then we'll sit out the April and October collection for 2021. Our state sources, we're trending right where we would expect to be. This is all of our state apportionment and state grants. And then our federal sources, we're sitting at about 6% under. You're going to see that true up here as we get towards the year end. Do you guys have any questions regarding revenues?
No.
Okay, let's go on to expenditures. Okay, first, green semicircle. Do you see that 7.44%? At one point, we were in the 3% tile range. So this is really good. Again, we're trying to move that up to the 8% range, which is our minimum fund balance requirement. So that's what we're working on right now. Again, it's just being extremely cautious about what we're spending our money on, and finding new grants, new funding that we can get through the door. Our expenditures year to date, we're currently at about 83.8% of what was actually budgeted. And in prior years, we were trending at about 84.79%. So we're about 1% under where we've trended in the past. Now, salaries and benefits, again, we've seen this variance from the beginning of the school year, and it's because after the budget was created last fiscal year, we did some last minute shuffling and combining of positions and ended up starting the year with reduced FTE from what we had originally budgeted. So that's where we're seeing that gap. And then that gap continues on to your blue semicircle, where we're seeing us trending at 76% versus the 83%. Do you guys have any questions regarding the expenditures? Okay, my favorite slide is the next.
I do.
Oh, go ahead, Craig.
Ashley, how much, are you able to tell, extrapolate, I suppose is a better word, some of these expenditures, especially like the total expenditures and the basic ed actual year to date, are there direct correlations between the shutdown and that number? Or is this basically us having to make those cuts and, kind of tighten the belt? Or is it a combination?
It's sort of a combination of both, because the odd thing is with the shutdown, we still had the same expenses, but more of them. So we still had all of the staff still on the payroll. We were given a mandate that all individuals, because they were already in the budget and all of that kind of stuff, that we were to make everybody whole. Everybody was to get paid. Therefore, everybody had to be working. And so we didn't see any decrease of expenditures on that side. It was all status quo. But we saw increases of expenditures when it came to custodial costs, disinfecting, equipment, PPE, all of that kind of stuff. We had to turn around and we had to balance that with things that we did see less of. PD, related to like having to travel, like go up to the ESD to receive PD and all that kind of stuff. We didn't have those costs because, travel was banned. Right. So we saw a decrease on that side. So basically we did see increases in certain areas, but we saw decreases in other areas, and they sort of netted each other out. So in reality, I'm not seeing a decreases of expenditures while we've been closed over what we had seen in prior years when we were open, but it was because our expenditures swapped.
Okay. Thank
Okay,
you.
so, yep. So this one is one of my favorite charts because the dark blue line is where we are and it's where we've been trending. So all of the three dotted lines above, that's our prior years. So it's the last 3 fiscal years. That solid blue is us now. So you can see in June, we were at where we were at last year. And then you can see how we start making a steep increase. Well, that's because of the shift of apportionment. And now we collect nearly 25% of our apportionment during the months of July and August. So instead of trending like we had last year, you see that steep increase because we're expecting almost 25% of our apportionment in the next 2 months, which right now it's showing that we should anticipate being at just under 2.6 million. Again, we're trying to hit that $2.8 million mark, which is one of the reasons if we can get the CARES Act funding in, we should be able to hit the $2.8 million mark by the end of the year. And that's sort of what we've been working on to maintain basically our savings account and get us through next year with all the unknown costs from the start of that year. So that green triangle is basically what we're trying to get ourselves to at this point. Do you guys have any questions over this trend or what we're looking at? Okay, so the next one, we go into a little bit more detail regarding our specific areas and any variances that we're seeing. So obviously red is considered unfavorable. But if you're looking at like the very first one, so local tax to only be under collected by $13,000, that in a pandemic environment is unbelievable. Much better than I could have even potentially anticipated. So that's actually really good. And then you're seeing that variance that I had talked to in the first slide on revenues, how we're about 7% under collected on the federal side. That's that $245,000 right there. Both of the 24,000, it's nominal for the state apportionment, and along with our state special purpose at 16,000, those will likely end up clearing themselves up by the end of the fiscal year. Now, under the expenditures, you're going to see that under the salaries for certificated and classified and employee benefits, you're seeing that we have more money there than we had anticipated based upon budget, but then you'll see that it's offset below by the red. One of the areas that we end up going into the red for in most years is under purchase services, and that's because a lot of our specialist employees under special education, we end up not being able to contract with them on the certificated side, and we end up having to hire through staffing agencies, which then they don't show up under our employee payroll. They're showing up under purchase service. And so that's where we're seeing the increase there. Even with the shutdown for federal special education purposes, you're still required to provide the services, obviously, to the students, even in a remote fashion. So those costs weren't saved by the closure. We still incurred those costs. And then you're seeing also an increase in the supplies, instructional resources, and non-capitalized items. Some of this has been PPE purchasing, especially when they started price gouging and we had to stock up on prices while they were low. And then some of the rest of that is a curriculum purchase that bled over into this year that started last year. That was 400,000 of it alone. So as of right now, financial wise, both our July and August apportionment payments are more than what our actual expenses are for the month, which means that that variance of about $400,000 is going to be added to fund balance to help get us through the unknowns for next year. But it does allow us to start the year with a 8% fund balance that technically by resolution we are required to do so. Do you guys have any questions regarding any specifics from this slide or any of the others? or where we are currently or trending to be?
Nope.
Perfect. Okay. So I think that's it for me then.
Well, again, thank you, Ashley, for all your hard work. I know this has not been a fun year for you. But I'm
Yeah,
really glad that you had a nice, happy event
thank
in-
you.
in your story. So,
Yeah,
okay,
thanks.
in learning.
Yes, Jackie, will you go ahead and open the PowerPoint? So a big part of what we're talking about in teaching and learning today is the question you're hearing that answers some of the answers to the questions that you're hearing Art, John, and everyone about what's going to happen this year. So we've been working really hard on this, and frankly, it is a moving target. We're planning for as many eventualities as we can. We're pretty sure that the idea of returning to school in the traditional bricks and mortar fashion that we all know and love is not going to happen. So currently we've been doing various Zoom meetings with instructional staff, with classified staff, with families to talk about where things are, where we think they're going, get some input and ideas from all of those groups. We've been constantly in touch with our colleagues around the state, with OSPI, with other researchers on how best to look at reopening in the pandemic environment, an environment like we're in. And so we were building a plan right now. The outline part of the plan without all the additional protocol pages is standing at 51 pages with about another 50 to 60 pages of protocol. So it's a very big plan. You'll be getting it by the first week of August, so you have plenty of time to look over it in detail before our August board meeting. The requirement by OSPI that the board approve the complete plan. Initially, we were instructed that that had to happen prior to 2 weeks prior to the start of the year, which would have been outside of the time schedule for our August meeting. But Chris Reichdahl with OSPI has changed that to say within 2 weeks of starting the school year. So right now we anticipate having that final resolution vote during the August meeting. If it turns out that they are sticking to the prior to the 2 weeks, then I will be contacting you about setting a special board meeting to do that work. But we're going to talk about the outline tonight. We've been working hard to follow public health guidelines to make sure we develop a system that supports kids, that addresses these 6 priorities: instruction, wellness, technology, facilities, effective operations, and effective governance, that has a plan in place that's good for kids as best as we can possibly do within the constraints that we have, given the requirements of the Department of Health and OSPI and the current conditions as a result of the pandemic. Okay, next, Jackie. So looking forward to fall, those are the things that we're taking into account. And as we do that, I have to say, we don't know for sure what it's going to look like. So we have lots of plans in place. We've done our most recent survey with our families, and out of 7, I was going to share the document with you, but I didn't realize Lisa had protected it so that I couldn't just automatically share it. So out of 722 responses so far, and almost 300 of those are from students at the high school, just over 80% are, well, actually in some grade bands, closer to 90% are selecting to use the hybrid model that we'll be talking about. Most of the remainder say they will be learning online only. A few are saying they're not sure. So we are looking at how can we best deliver instruction for kids and also meet the needs of all different kids. And so there are going to be some flexible pieces of our model depending on student needs. And we'll go next. So reopening school, K-12, actually P-12, is going to include a couple of options. We are going to have a hybrid model, and we're going to have a all remote model. The hybrid model basically will look like the children will spend probably 2 days a week in the school site. And then they will have assignments that they work on the other 3 days a week. at home, and we are planning, and most of that will be done electronically where possible. We are working on plans to accommodate the students who have no connectivity in their homes, so that we'll be able to work that out. We have multiple plans for that as well. We do anticipate issuing devices to students. We are just ordered enough additional laptops with our CARES, anticipating paying for them with our CARES funding partially, to be able to deploy one-to-one devices to students in North Mason to be able to do their schoolwork. But families will have a choice between this hybrid model and a model where they learn completely remotely, but with the support of our teachers. So, and then at the high school, there are additional models. So just go ahead and we'll start with preschool. We are working on programming at the preschool with our partners at the ESD. And our programming at the preschool isn't just dependent on the requirements that we have for our preschool, but also for the requirements of the Head Start and ECAP program, because our kids are engaged in learning together. So they are working on a model that will pretty closely mirror what's happening within the elementary schools, but also meet all the requirements of the preschools. And that information Tom and Kristen from the ESD have been working on that plan, and that will be included in the big plan that you see for the district as we come along. So, let's see.
Go ahead back there and help her. I'm going down.
So, our preschool program, has some specific requirements around space and bodies and certain number of feet per person, and all of those things will still have to be followed along with the social distancing requirements. K through 5, we will have 2 options available broadly for families, 100% remote learning option. And within that option, we will be working with an online provider supported by our teachers, an online curriculum, and which is similar to what all of our neighbors are doing. And we're still in the process of deciding which one of those providers we will use, because we use Edgenuity at the secondary level, and we have a contract with Edgenuity for 6th through 12th grade, but they do not provide elementary curriculum. So we're looking at a couple of other providers that our neighbors are using for K-5. However, if we have a family that has kiddos in elementary school and secondary school, and they don't want them using 2 different curriculum systems, we will be able to, through our Home Link program, allow their secondary school student to use the same curriculum family as the elementary school students. And then the AABB hybrid model looks like this. Students will be at school 2 days a week, either Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, Friday. They will not be at school on Wednesdays. On Wednesdays, they may have time for some, they will still have work to do. They will be working at home on Wednesdays and the other 2 days that they're not at school. But there will also be the potential for class meetings with your teacher on Wednesday mornings. That will also be Wednesday afternoons will be the time when our teachers do what has traditionally been their Monday collaboration work in our district. And 6 through 12, we will have also a 100% remote learning option. We also have Home Link available to 6 through 12 students, which is also an all online model, but it's less dependent on our teachers, and you're working with teachers somewhere else in the cloud in that model. We will have the AABB hybrid model. Students at the high school might also in 11th and 12th grade be enrolled in Running Start, or in 10th through 12th grade involved in courses at West Sound Tech. Students in our special populations. So one of the things that is a little bit different than that we're going to be doing with this model is we're going to be looking at the individual needs of kids. So even if whatever grade you're in and you select hybrid, if your student, if we identify your student through our multi-tiered systems of support as needing additional support in some way. So yes, that could be students who have an IEP, or it could be students who are newcomers to our country and need the extra language development. But it could be a general ed student who we identify as having enough needs for additional supports that we look at additional days of the 4 that our kids are coming to school, that they would come to school. So some kids will come to school 3 or even 4 days of the week based on their individual needs. And what we're going to do right now, what we're looking at is that the first week of school will be a conference and planning week with kids and families. So we want to find something cute to call it, and we haven't thought of a good phrase for those conference days yet. But on those days, kids will come in with probably with their parents, and older kids maybe not, but they'll meet with their teachers, they'll meet with other support staff, they'll get their devices issued to them, they'll learn how to use those devices, they'll learn how to get onto the curriculum and the materials that they're going to be able to need to use on those laptops when they take them home. They are going to get any assessment done we need to check on their present levels and see what we need to assign or what kind of supports they might need to have done. So all of those things would happen in a conference manner, in a kind of a one-on-one way during that first week of school to help us set our kids up for success during the rest of the year. And one of the other things we're going to be paying attention to at that time is, there's been obvious impact on all of us from this response to the pandemic that we've all been dealing with. And there's been a lot of impact on kids. So we're going to look at what social emotional supports need to be built into their days as we move into the school year as well. So transportation kids will be able to ride buses to school. Although in the school buildings, we have very specific requirements for maintaining the 6-foot social distancing, and everyone will wear a mask. We will do screenings when everyone, every day, and we have a couple of ways we're looking at screening. I'll talk about that in a minute. But kids, when they come on the buses, will have to wear masks. They will not be required to sit 6 feet apart on the buses, according to the state. We won't have full buses because we'll have half of the kids at a time at most on a bus and coming to school. And buses are required to have the windows open where possible. So we are encouraging, and the state is asking us to encourage families who choose to transport their own kids to and from school, but we will have buses, they will run as usual, kids will wear their masks, and we will work to have the best social distancing we can, even though it's not a requirement for transportation.
Dana, with regards to transportation,
Yeah.
In order to have that distancing, are you going to have like a bus go on the same route twice, or
No,
how do we get around that?
No, we're not, because we're not required to keep kids 6 feet apart, but we'll have half the kids on the bus that we normally do, because
I get you. Okay.
By doing AABB, we're only
okay.
having half of them come to school each set of 2 days.
Gotcha. Thank you.
No problem. Food service. So if you're in the hybrid model and you're at school, we're going to do a grab and go version where you go through the cafeteria. You probably won't be eating in the commons or the cafeteria. You might on some days, but we'll have to enforce the 6-foot social distancing. You might get to go outside and eat. At the elementary schools, they will probably eat in the classrooms. We're working on that plan right now because we have to ensure that their teachers have duty-free lunches. And then on the days that you're at the end of your second day, whether it's a Tuesday or a Friday, you will have the opportunity to take home the lunches for the next 3 school days, so that you will get all 5 days of lunches and breakfast, but you will take them home on the end of your second day on site each week. And then kids who are learning all online will be able to pick up their lunches on Wednesdays, on the day that we're not serving other kids at school. They will pick up a week's worth of breakfasts and lunches on Wednesdays. We will be following state, local, and WIID WIAA Guidelines on Athletics. WIAA is meeting again on Monday to determine, they said last week that athletics at schools would begin after Labor Day, but that they are meeting again on Monday, the 20th, to make a determination. Based on the governor's determination today, we'll have to wait and see what they say for fall sports. We will follow those guidelines. We have been following them. They did allow students to do conditioning this summer when this counties were in phase 3, but now that will change when we hit Monday and the governor's pronouncement comes into place about outdoor activities. So I can't predict right now. I can guess, but one of the suggestions that we know that WIAA is looking strongly at is suspending athletics in the fall and moving them to shorter seasons that begin in the winter after we return from Christmas vacation. So we'll just have to see what they say and let the community know as we find those things out. One suggestion is that districts and schools look at getting involved in esports. And those are, for those of you who don't know, those are competing in gaming activities. But if WIAA supports them, they're very limited ones because they're looking at levels of violence and those kinds of things and what they would support as an interscholastic competition. So that's athletics and activities.
I feel like parents should be able to take part in that, especially when it comes to like the Madden games and things like that.
You should get to play. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be really fun. So we're creating, following the guidelines, we are developing cleaning and sanitation protocols that will be in place in all buildings, that will be attached and included in the final opening plan that will be available not just to you when we send it to you, but to the community online. It will include screening protocols for staff and students, which we have in place now, and we will require self-quarantine where indicated. We will collaborate with the health department on contact tracing protocols and decisions regarding who gets quarantined and when we have to close classrooms, bus routes, or schools. So I know that there's a million more things I can tell you about the planning, but I think the best way to do that is probably by you asking questions right now. Art?
Yeah, going back to the bus part briefly, the kids who are doing completely remote and having the chance to pick up lunches, is that going to be done by bus, or would they be coming into the school to get
They will have to come into a school site to do that. We aren't getting funded. We were able to do that in the spring because we got to keep our transportation funding as if the kids were riding to and from school every day. And so we were able to spend that funding to run the bus routes to deliver food. The only transportation funding we're getting this coming school year is if we are delivering kids to and from school, and only for delivering those kids to and from school. So we won't have the funds to do that. So they will have to pick up their lunches at school sites for the week.
Thank you.
Yes. Leanna?
There it is.
Unmute,
Are we?
Leanna.
I just did. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Are we going to have a compiled list of frequently asked questions on our website so that when people ask questions, we can go, oh, look, here's a link, and you might find your question here? I think that
Yes.
might,
We're
I
working
hear a
on- we're
lot of
working
the
on that.
questions repeated a lot. So
We're working
that might
on it.
help. Very cool.
Thank you.
Would that be something that we would do after the plan is approved?
I now that we finished drafting the plan and that I have distributed the overall draft this evening to the admin team with things highlighted in red that they need to provide to complete the plan. So while they're working on that, then in our office, we'll start working on those frequently asked questions and get those posted.
That was a really good idea, Leanna. I think
Yeah,
that
thank you.
helped a lot. Does anybody, I'm sitting at Jackie's desk because I hit a button and lost myself. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah, one other thing, just to kind of piggyback on Leanna, I think even from the social media aspect is maybe a question a day, you know, a frequently asked question of the day posted
Okay.
might be helpful as well.
Okay, I'm writing that down.
And I think one of the big things to point out with this is that we're being given guidelines from the state level, and we have to operate within those guidelines. So although, because one of the things that I see quite a bit within the community is, well, we just want the kids to go back to school 5 days a week. We're only given that option if we have the facilities to social distance and meet all these other guidelines, which unfortunately we do not. So it can't be an option for us. And as we all know, just like with Inslee's, with the information he gave out this afternoon, things continuously change. And so we work to incorporate those changes, and then we have to work to incorporate the new changes when everything changes a week from now.
So the
Yeah, absolutely. But I
document
think
that you'll be receiving in August to look at will include at least one picture from each school of what a new setup in a classroom looks like, with the limited number of desks and seats that we can have, with all the stuff that's normally in there that can't be in there because we can't keep it clean, you know, stuffed animals, things like that. So that'll be part of what we're putting together for everyone to see. Things are going to look different. And it's going to be really challenging for our students and our teachers, because some of the things that we emphasize as ways that we learn, and the ways that are best practice for learning together, you know, working in small groups and those kinds of things, that becomes a challenge when you have to work in a small group sitting 6 feet apart. And so we're all working really hard to have a very comprehensive plan that we can share, but we can certainly start sharing answers to questions we're hearing right now as we move towards the fall. Yes, Leanna.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And I know that you guys will, but just an emphasis on making sure, because things are changing so rapidly and constantly, that we make sure that whoever is taking care of the frequently asked questions, that they stay on top of it to change something that may have changed. I know we've had something that where it was old news, but it was still in like some of our stuff. So it might've been misconstrued. And sometimes the community only sees what they see. And just because we said it, they may not hear it if it's not written. So if we change things, or if something changes, that we make sure that we are on top of that list,
Sure.
which I think we will, or you will. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions, concerns? We'll all be anxious to see the plan when it appears here next, probably in the next couple of weeks, right, Dana?
In the next couple of weeks, yes. By the end of the first week in August, I have asked for all the documents I need from the department heads and principals by the beginning of that first week, so that they can be uploaded into the one document and it will all be posted together. The draft is done at this point, and I will send that out to you all to start taking a look at, but you'll know that where it has red text, there will be new things added.
Okay. Well, thank you. I know that was a ton of work, and you can let your team know that we really appreciate all the thought that they're putting into this and all the considerations that they have to make. And then when it changes the next day and you're back to the drawing board. So we get that. We do have a resolution here to approve.
Yeah, we were anticipating that we would have a resolution language provided by WASDA by this afternoon. This is a different one. Oh, no, this is this one. Okay. Sorry, I was anticipating that we would have one for a plan and we didn't get that. So I'm kind of in two different places. If you'll remember earlier in the year for the graduating class that just graduated, we approved a resolution which suspended our North Mason requirement of 27 credits for graduation and decreased it to the same 24 credits that is a statewide requirement. Given that our students will be learning through a hybrid or online environment and have had some impacts to their ability to earn credits so far just this spring that we are correcting as we enter the fall year, I am asking that the board approve a resolution to extend that suspension of the 27 credit requirement and bringing us still in line with the state requirement of 24 credits for the class of 2021.
Is there any discussion? Art?
Yes.
You have to have a motion first,
Oh,
and I would make a motion
all right. Thank you, Craig.
just to approve that.
Art, go ahead.
Okay, the very second line of that motion, I'm just curious, reading it right off the bat makes it sound like school was closed all year. I'm wondering, is it important? Maybe it's not important to change the wording of that, whereas schools have been closed throughout Washington State.
Yeah, we should say throughout Washington during the spring of the 1920 school year.
And if that's important to be more accurate on that, then I would do that. I would suggest that, but otherwise I'm totally in favor of the resolution.
Okay, we could change that language to say schools have been operating, how would you say it? Operating in a virtual learning mode during
In a remote learning model. Yeah.
during the 1920 school year, during the last quarter of the 1920 school year.
We can say that.
Would that work?
Yes.
Okay. Is that good, Art?
Yeah, I just wanted to be a little bit more accurate if that were.
Okay. Yeah, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Craig.
I would like to thank you guys, the administration, for doing this early instead of, kind of waiting for sometime middle of the year. I think going into the year with this movement or this recommendation takes a lot of the burden off incoming seniors. And I think maybe hopefully help what will probably be another challenging year.
We hope so.
I think it's a good move.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, we have a motion to approve the amended Resolution 14G20, graduation requirements 2021. All in favor? Let's see, Art.
Aye.
Leanna.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Craig.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Thank you very much. The motion passes. Anything else on capital projects?
Well, if you get to drive by, you should come look at the beautiful softball field. Or you should drive by Sand Hill and look at the beautiful new roof. Those projects are coming to a close. The roofing company has some things to fix. So they had a couple little small mishaps that they damaged some things that they're fixing before their job is finished. And they're still finishing up some things at the softball field. So those are pretty exciting that those are ready for our kids when they get to use them.
Okay, thank you. Upcoming board letter columnists, we have Craig for July. Did you do it?
It'll be to Jackie tomorrow. I'm finishing it up.
Okay, thank you. We have John for August, Leanna for September, and I have October. So now we're moving to assurance of organizational performance and policy review and monitoring reports. The GP policies, we don't write a monitoring report for those, as these are the board's guiding documents. We have ER2, organizational continuity and executive succession. Have you all had an opportunity to review the monitoring report?
Yes,
Okay. I'll entertain a motion. Oh, Art, sorry.
So
Yeah.
moved.
Yeah, I would like to have some small discussion about the GP policies. But we can get back to that.
Okay.
Okay, we can go back to that right now. Did you have something?
Yes. Unfortunately, the room I'm in, it has no lights on, so I'm reading in the dark. I noticed a couple of issues. I mean, there's, this is 20, 30 things that we looked at, and I did make the effort and I did look at every single one of them because these are our bread and butter with our policy governance setup. And I found a couple things that I'm a little curious about. One of them is in the GP8, which is agenda planning. And there's a clause in that. And unfortunately, being on the Zoom, I can't get to it on the computer because if I push this button, I'll lose everything. So I just have to do this from memory now. On the agenda planning, there's a point in there when it talks about samples of what gets put on the consent agenda. And it talked about the ER policies are one of the things that could be in a consent agenda. And that didn't seem right to me.
That doesn't seem right to me either.
In any case, I just wanted to point it out that might be just a piece of the language that we ought to change or whatever. And then another, and again, these things are minor things, but like I said, I took the time to look for these little minor things because we've done a really nice job with all of our policy setups. And thanks to someone for getting the lights on. On the GP11, which is a board member's conflict of interest. I didn't write really complete notes, but it seemed like there was some kind of a conflict. And I guess what I could do rather than taking all of our time here is maybe sit down with somebody, Laura or Dana, just to go over the things that seem to be not quite kosher there. Okay.
Why don't we do that? And then we can bring some suggestions up at the August board meeting.
Okay.
Okay. For some language adjustments.
Okay. Well, then in that case, I will mute myself.
Okay.
And we're back to ER2. We have a motion on the floor to find the superintendent's performance to comply with the requirements of ER2. Are there any discussion? No? Okay, then I will ask for the roll call vote. Art?
Aye.
Leanna?
Aye.
John?
aye.
Craig?
Aye.
And I'll say aye, and this ER2 has been approved. Okay, E5, responsible citizens. Have you all had a chance to read that report?
yeah.
Okay.
John has a question.
Well, I just wanted to move, if we're going to move on this.
Sorry,
Yes.
John.
Go ahead,
Yeah, I
John.
just want to move that we find the superintendent in compliance with E5.
Okay. Is there any discussion? It's been a kind of a strange year to have to write monitoring reports because it's sort of like trying to hold down a moving target. If there's no more discussion, then I'll ask for the vote. Art?
Aye.
Leanna?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
And Craig?
You're mute. Oh, there you go.
Aye, sorry.
Oh, okay. And I vote aye. And the administration has approved. The board of directors finds the superintendent has reasonably interpreted the provisions of the ends policy and further finds the district is making reasonable and satisfactory progress toward achieving the desired results called for in the policy. So thank you. And now we're at E2, student success. I'll ask for a motion.
So moved.
Okay, discussion? No, I think it has to be extremely difficult to try and define student success when the students have been gone. And it's all done over
I
the.
did actually have a question on this one. I apologize.
Okay.
Dana, in regards to the students who are earning college credits, you have it listed as 64.4% of the students. Is that 64.4% of the students eligible to take college courses, or 64.4% of the total student body?
No, it's of total students.
Okay, so not
Of,
every
of
student
the, at
is
that, well, of high school students, yeah.
right, but there's are freshmen and sophomores able to take college credits?
They are in some ways, because they can take them through the dual credit, like some of the CTE classes.
Okay, so that's available to the underclassmen.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay. And it's nice to see how that trend is. I mean, that's the highest it looks like we've been in several years.
And Dana,
That's all.
Thanks. Can you describe the International Baccalaureate and the Cambridge International?
I am not as familiar with the Cambridge program, so I would have to do some research to do that. It is similar to International Baccalaureate. Neither of them are programs that we have at this time. Those are programs that are aligned with learning requirements that are typical in European schools particularly, and so that students would take courses and be held to a level of assessment that would be comparable if they were to, say, transfer to classes in England or Scotland or Italy, and so that they would be in line for graduating on time or the equivalent of that overseas. They are intensive academic courses. It is a system of intensive academic courses that begins as early as elementary school and moves through the school system. It is different than AP, but it is intending to do the same things to prepare kids strongly for what happens after high school. We don't have those programs right now. We are focusing on building a strong AVID program, which prepares all students for academics beyond high school, as well as the world of work, and provides some really strong supports. So once we have all of those programs, take really in-depth training responsibilities for staff throughout the building before you can add the opportunities for kids. So we would like to look at adding either or both of those at some point in the future. But first, we want to make sure we have a strong AVID program so that we're not jumping from idea to idea, but doing each really well in supporting our students in moving forward. And I can provide much more detail at the next meeting if you like.
Okay, thank you. All right, is there any other discussion or questions? Okay, there's a motion to find that the superintendent has reasonably interpreted the provisions of the end policy and further finds the district is making reasonable and satisfactory progress toward achieving the desired results for the policy. Roll call vote. Art?
Aye.
Leanna?
Aye.
John?
Yeah, right.
Okay, Craig?
Aye.
And I vote aye, and the motion is approved. Now we have policy review for two policies that we discussed at the last board meeting, E1 district mission and E4 school engagement. Do you have anything further that you would like to comment on for either of those? Okay, then we are at adjournment and the good of the order. Do any of you, the board members, do you have any, and Aaliyah, do you have any other comments that you would like to make at this time?
Well, I just
Yeah, John.
I just think that from all I can see of from reading over our preparation for this evening, that the district is taking everything pretty well in stride And it will be interesting to see the specifics. But I also wanted to commend our chief executive on the budget. My goodness sakes, here we are in a terrible situation, and we are economically in as good a shape as we could be, considering the circumstances. And when you factor in the loss of the levy, I think that we're doing remarkably well.
Thank you, John. Anybody else? Okay, Director Campbell has the board self-assessment. Oh, I'm sorry, Aaliyah, did you have something?
I just wanted to say that as a student, we really appreciate all the work that you guys are doing, and it's really clear that through these stressful times and with all the changing conditions and requirements, that we really appreciate all the work that you guys are doing as a student, and we're really thankful.
Thank you. And we're really glad to have your voice on the board. Thank you so much. Okay, Director Campbell has the board self-assessment of the meeting.
Well, would somebody be so kind as to put the criteria up? I was sent them, that's true, but I can't.
Okay, so general meeting behavior.
Yeah, I thought we were well behaved.
Okay, so that would be satisfactory, sir?
Yes, I think that would be satisfactory, quite
Okay.
satisfactory.
Governance principles review, which is our actions occur at the
Yeah,
policy.
there's no reason. I'm familiar with the categories, and I think everyone is. It seems to me the meeting was very well planned. Everything was thought through. We had no review of, we had just a regular review of policies. Each item was brought up in turn and discussed where we had questions of it. And as I was looking very carefully at the body language of each person, it seemed to me everybody was pretty attentive. So no unusual rudeness or anything. Everyone was treated with respect. And it seems to me that we're fine on that regard.
Okay.
So I would do us, I think in general, when we look things over, that we're quite satisfactory.
All right, thank you very much. We will fill out the form for you if that's all right.
Yes, I certainly give my permission for that.
Okay, thank you. Our next board meeting date is August 20th at 6:30, and we don't know what that will look like. Right now, it looks like it's going to be the same thing that we're doing right here, unless something changes. So with that, I will adjourn the meeting, and thank you all very much for managing to zoom in. Oh, Ashley, did you have something?